When first looking at a perfect circle's logo, most will just see two crescents facing each other, one smaller than the other, and not an actual circle. However, it actually is a perfect circle that just isn't facing you directly. If one were to switch the perspective in which you are looking at it, as if you are looking at it from the top right corner, you will start to see the circle. You can easily start to see it if you connect the crescents with semicircles. Look, I'll show you. See it now? Stick around and see what else you didn't know about this band and its first album.
Hits on the hollow from that CD, A Perfect Circle!
It arrived at a time when many were beginning to declare the death of rock and roll. A Perfect Circle's first album, Noms, would give simple hard rock music a lifeboat to keep it afloat for a little bit longer. Released on May 23, 2000, the same day as Eminem's Marshall Mathers LP, Noms entered the Billboard 200 at number 4, higher than any previous ranking of a rock band's debut album. The record sold more than 188,000 copies in its first week and was certified platinum later that same year by the Recording Industry Association of America. Often thought of, unjustifiably so, as Tool singer Maynard Keenan's side project, A Perfect Circle would create an everlasting impact in the hearts of many rock fans. The recording and marketing of Noms and its follow-up live shows were an impressive body of art and work that was done by a group of musicians that in retrospect can almost be seen as a supergroup. Billy Howerdale, Maynard Keenan, Josh Freese, Paslin Chanton, and Troy Van Leeuwen, oh, and also Tim Alexander at times, were only in a band together for about 2 years and were able to do something remarkable together that I think deserves a deep and analytical retelling. This is the story of the genesis of A Perfect Circle and Noms. It is early 1999, and Tool, the alternative rock and metal band, is finished writing on the mega success of their third record release, Anima, 3 years earlier. But their record label, Zoo Entertainment, would be acquired by Volcano Entertainment, and then a contract dispute would halt production on any new Tool music. When it became evident to Maynard Keenan, the vocalist frontman of Tool, that all the legal matters were going to take way too long for his liking, the relentless high-energy rock star became restless. Maynard would share, "I knew I had more to offer than the timing of Tool would allow. More songs, more music, more arts. I come from a background of people who couldn't do any of those things. They couldn't be in one band, let alone 3. They couldn't add up the monthly bills or even dress themselves. If you had the means, the knowledge to create something and you don't, shame on you. If you're able to be good at your job, to raise a child, to plant a garden, whatever, it's your responsibility to do it, not only for yourself, but for the world." But wait. Let's backtrack a few years on a different timeline. Billy Howerdale was born in New Jersey on May 18, 1970, and was attending West Milford High School when he started playing guitar in 1987. Billy was inspired to pick up the guitar after spending some time with his friend Rob Cobell, who was a metal guitar playing shredder who lived just down the street from Billy. Some of Billy's own musical influences include Pink Floyd, The Cure, Ozzy Osbourne, Radiohead, Killing Joke, just to name a few. His TV science teacher would scout him to become a stagehandler, doing lighting for his high school's theater program. It was from this that would spark an interest in getting involved with live performance shows. During his senior year of high school, with a fresh memory of seeing DMV clerks unhappy doing their jobs when getting his driver's license, Billy would start to seriously contemplate what he was going to do with his life after high school, knowing he wasn't a good fit to go to college. Shortly after attending a Pink Floyd concert during the Momentary Lapse of Reason tour at what was then Giant Stadium, witnessing just how much more of a positive environment this was, Billy was inspired to work with touring bands.
But when I graduated high school, I started working for bands around New York and New Jersey. I just answered an ad in the Village Voice in New York City. Yeah, I went to this place in the middle of New Jersey to answer an ad to be a lighting guy for a local club band. Answered the ad, went down there. The guy ran me through the whole setup process, which I knew a bit from the high school program. When it came time to start, I filled out the paperwork, and he looked at my birthday, and he goes, "You're 18. You're about to be 18 next week. Like, you just wasted my time. Get the hell out of here." Like, he was so pissed. He's like, "You're going to be in bars. You got to be 21 years old." Left, got a call back, and a couple days later, the guy goes, "Okay." He was, in full Jersey fashion. Like, I don't know if I could swear on here, but it's just like every expletive.
Yeah, you can say whatever.
Yeah. All right, fucking knucklehead. Like, you wasted all my time. Can you show up on Wednesday? The knucklehead that I just hired, he screwed me over. You keep your mouth shut. Don't touch a drink. I go, "Yes, sir." And so I just started working in clubs. Like, I just started working for bands doing lighting.
He would eventually work as a stage handler at the Stone Pony in New Jersey, at times managing some of the bookings of the bands that came through. The first time he toured with a band as a tech was for a band called the Throbs for no pay.
I think it was a fateful day where Joe Walsh came in and his tech kind of gave me the whole rundown. And I was like, okay, I finally got my demystifying explanation as to what this is and how it could be. And just one thing led to another, and another guy went on tour and he goes, "Hey, this kid Billy would be good. You should bring him out on tour." And I went on my first tour for no pay. It was just per diem.
He later continued working as a guitar tech for a few different successful bands and eventually relocated to Los Angeles. From witnessing many bands come and go without much success, Billy knew that diving fully into being an aspiring musician was not the path for him. Some of the successful bands Billy would tech for were Fishbone, 9 Inch Nails, Smashing Pumpkins, David Bowie, and eventually Tool.
This is our former guitar tech. It's his last name, Billy Howardell.
However, Billy would continue writing his own music during these years, and while on tour as a guitar tech for Fishbone in 1992, Billy was eating dinner at a hotel lobby with Fishbone guitarist Kendall Jones, and as Billy recalls, Kendall would say to him, "What the hell are you working for me for?" And I was like, "What?" He's just like, "I've heard some of your stuff. Why aren't you doing that?" This was a very potent moment in Billy's life. And from that moment on, he was determined to pursue his own music more seriously, even as he continued working as a tech for major tours.
I always kind of had the intention, and I actually started a band with this guy Kendall from Fishbone back in like '93. And it was just he and I were looking for a drummer, and we wrote songs, and then it just fell apart. I don't know. So I was just like, oh well, I'll just go back on the road. And more and more songs were coming together, and I just thought they were starting to sound really good. So I just like, this is stupid to let them fall on the ears of my girlfriend and my mother and 4 friends. You know what I mean? It's just like, I might as well just give it a shot.
On that same 1992 tour, Billy would meet Maynard for the first time, whose band Tool was on the same touring lineup. About 3 years later, when Billy started working as a Pro Tools recording software engineer, he would also become Maynard's roommate in his North Hollywood home. Billy had broken up with his girlfriend and had packed up all of his stuff and moved out of their place just outside of LA. He had planned at staying at a hotel for the time being, but before that, he had wandered into the venue and bar, then known as the Gaslight, later renamed the Opium Den. There he ran into Maynard and the two would reconnect, with Maynard eventually offering a spare room in his rented house in North Hollywood, on Lameda Street. A two-door style 3-bedroom house with a huge backyard, tall trees, a koi pond, and tree roots lifting up in front of the house where Billy's room was located.
I was working on songs in my bedroom. He had heard them because we were roommates. And, as he'd walk in the room and say, whatever he said, let's go get some sushi. And by the way, that sounds cool. Okay, cool. And there was just that. It was very casual, very non-committal.
Billy would start working with Tool as a tech when they recorded their album Anima, and he would bring in his laptop in the studio to work on some of his own music during downtime.
I was watching Kids in the Hall episodes on videotape in our studio, and he was working on the computer in the background. And I actually turned off Kids in the Hall to go listen to what he was doing.
And you no bones about it, eh? Just kind of like, can I be in there?
Well, I had to put on a dress.
Yes, that's right.
I had a sign on the door for that.
You were in a dress last time too.
Exactly.
You had the prosthetic breasts and the whole. That was an amazing show.
Those weren't prosthetic.
Oh.
The Lone style pump ups.
Yeah, just like.
When Maynard heard Billy's music, Maynard said that he could definitely hear himself singing over it. Though flattered with the idea at first, Billy didn't think too much of it, especially since he originally intended to have a female vocalist sing over his music. After Billy initially brushed off Maynard's first advances, he started to persist again in early 1999, when Tool was on its hiatus and asked for a demo tape of Billy's music. When Billy liked what Maynard did vocally to his tracks, it became evident to both of them that they should see how far this collaboration should go.
Threw up The Hollow and Restless were the first two that I started with, that I had pretty fleshed out. And God, it just immediately, I think those two songs, but especially The Hollow, he had cracked the code on almost instantly. It was amazing. And it's not easy, you know, like what he's singing over is the same thing that what I gave him is what he's singing over. It's like this arpeggiated guitar line that's kind of, I think most singers would go, okay, guitar player, give me a bar chord or something, you know? And obviously in Tool, he's the grand puzzle master. And so this is probably light work for him. You know?
Yeah.
So that was the thing. I'd present him songs and he would respond in musical conversation. And sometimes in front of me and sometimes not. He'd be like, oh, I got something. Go put me, you know, let's put up a mic and they'll track them and then we'll go through takes. And
they would soon start to think of other musicians that could join in on their new ambitious project. And just a quick reminder, if you guys are liking this video so far, give it a like, leave a comment, or subscribe to this channel. This channel is still in its early stages and I'm very curious as to where it could go. So any help is greatly appreciated. Thank you so much, and let's keep going. Guitarist Troy Von Leeuwen was recruited by Maynard, who he had first met as a member of the band Failure, who opened up for Tool while on tour with them in 1992.
Troy's playing guitar live. He's great. He's the greatest guitar player in that. Just ask him if you do want him to play anything, he just plays it exactly. And then on top of that, he's very creative.
Rare combo to have like an amazing, somewhat studio musician and a great live player, but also that's creative.
Yeah.
It's really a nice combo. Toured with Troy when he was in Failure, which is, you know, one of my favorite bands. And to really have the honor of working with him in this band is just taking this to a whole nother level.
Billy Howardell had long admired Paz Lenchenton since he had seen her play in a different band in the past. Paz had apparently been introduced to Billy through Tool's guitarist Adam Jones, and Paz was also the first of the band that Billy had actually already been jamming with before deciding that Maynard was going to sing.
Paz and I and another girl, Jackie, started playing music. It's actually this girl Jackie's band. I wanted to get involved because I went to see them play one night and fell in love with Paz from the audience. I just think she's the best bass player and she's just so damn sexy. I mean, can't not be intrigued.
She's got the sauce.
Yeah. Started playing with her a little bit, and when this thing started to come about, I mean, I'd say Paz was the one that really kicked my ass into making this into what it is. And, it might have just stayed at a certain level and never got pushed.
A Perfect Circle was the beginning of my career. Not the beginning of, it wasn't my first band. I was working on the music video for Tool because I went to film school. Adam Jones of Tool did all the music videos for Tool. And Anima just came out, or was about to come out. And he hired me to be his assistant. And while we were working on this, which was very tedious because it's animation, which was what I was very much into, stop motion animation. You know, he learns that I'm a bass player. That he's like, oh yeah, I hear that you play bass. You know, my guitar tech, Billy Howardell, is working on some material. You know, you should call him. He lives really close to you. So I'd go over to his house and we would jam, you know, like I'd play, he was like, play me your songs, you know? Yeah. And he was so sweet, and just like, we developed these songs together. And Maynard at that time was his roommate, and he was kind of peeking into the little studio that in the backyard that Billy created, like from his garage. And he's like, hey, you know, I like what you guys are doing. Do you need a singer? And originally, you know, when Billy was writing these songs, he heard a female voice. But, you know, Maynard has that very feminine, not necessarily feminine, but very melodic voice to me. That even though I know a lot of people, you know, hear it as like this male, but his influences were all female. You know, it was kind of taking longer in a sense for me because everyone else had another project, and I really didn't. And I was getting antsy now. Everyone had something, but I didn't have anything. And I was like, look, if this doesn't start happening, I'm gonna well, and it did. It happened.
Billy was already working with Guns N' Roses as an audio engineer and recording Chinese Democracy when he started to record Murder Noms at his home. Josh Freese was playing drums for Guns N' Roses in the recording of Chinese Democracy, and so this is when he would start to hit it off with Billy. In fact, Billy and Josh first met when Josh auditioned for Guns N' Roses, and Billy was actually filling in on bass for the band after Duff McKagan had just recently quit. Maynard had previously met Josh as well, while drumming for the band Devo.
I get the job with Guns N' Roses. I'm now in this recording studio 5 nights a week, Guns N' Roses, and all these, there's guitar techs, there's drum techs, there's engineers, there's Pro Tools guys, there's all these extra people and employees working down there, right? So the guy running the Pro Tools rig was this guy, Billy, whom I didn't know from Matt, I didn't know him, you know, and cool, and he knew the Pro Tools inside and out back when, you know, this is 23 years ago, back when not everybody knew. Got to a couple weeks later, we're in the studio, I'm with this guy, Billy, every night, and we're kind of becoming friends. And we're in the studio, and one night, you know, I'm walking through like the kitchenette area at the studio, and Billy's on the phone. He goes, hey, Josh. He goes, here. And he hands me the phone. I'm like, who is it? He goes, Maynard. I go, hey, what's happening, man? You know, and he goes, hey, that guy you're hanging out with right now, that guy Billy? I go, yeah. He goes, he's way too modest and cool, but he writes awesome fucking songs, and I want to start a band with him, and you should be the drummer. I was like, okay, well, I'd like to hear it, you know? And so Billy played me some stuff, and it was cool, and it was different, and Maynard was really passionate about it.
Josh is such a great drummer. I'm always so proud to show him off, especially going in, like even when we mixed these tracks with Alan. I said, you won't believe, put it on the computer. You can fix a lot of things on the computer nowadays. I didn't have to fix anything with Josh's drums. It was all choices. You know. Josh is, as far as what I've heard, the #1 studio musician, you know, the most desired studio musician in town, and for good reason. For him to give it all up and come and join this thing says a lot. I mean, it's, you know, without him being here, I can honestly say his inspiration to this is extremely high. So
2-year contract, and when it was up, I was able to kind of like re-examine it and renew it or not. And I just didn't see them leaving that studio anytime soon. And I was kind of going, man, am I going to sit here for another 2 years in this control room in the studio while they like fidget with stuff? I don't know if I want to spend another 2 years of my life doing this. At the same time, on the weekends, I'd been kind of messing around with Billy Howardell and Maynard James Keenan and starting a Perfect Circle. And that was like a tangible, real thing. Like, hey, we're going to make a record and we're going to get a deal. And we're going to leave on tour. We're going to book shows. Let's go. And I was like, okay, this is like a regular thing. This isn't being isolated in some ivory tower somewhere away from the rest of the world in a weird bubble, which I felt like kind of Guns N' Roses was.
However, initially they would alternate between Josh and Tim Alexander, drummer for Primus, who had just recently quit, who had toured with Tool until they had settled on a final drummer. Josh played with the Perfect Circle for their first 3 shows in LA in August, and then Tim would fill in the next months in September and October for their first mini club tour. With a band lineup now complete and a handful of songs that were somewhat finished, they would start to book a few shows months in advance, with the purpose of tightening up their sound and chemistry together. The band would continue to work on more material with the hopes of soon having a full-length album of music. Having shared a house and tour buses together for years, Maynard and Billy were used to each other's working style and seemed to have worked at a pretty quick pace in tackling this new ambitious project. They continued bouncing ideas off of each other, raising the bar for each song more and more. Billy would say of Maynard, "I trust him. Even when he does something and my first reaction is, huh? I let it go. I don't question it. And not because I don't want to piss him off. It's just literally that I completely trust him." Maynard, while working on this project in the early stages, was quite enthusiastic, sharing, "The argument that many people had about Tool's music is that they couldn't hear the vocals. I had to scream to be heard. And that's not necessarily a pleasant sound. It works for the rage, but it doesn't work for the art if you have to scream your head off to be heard over the amps." In a way, besides being its own band, I always thought a Perfect Circle as a way to serve Tool. I thought if my voice was more audible and people learned how to recognize it, they'd have more respect for Tool if they could hear that 4th instrument. On August 15th, 1999, there was a 2-show fundraising music event for former Circle Jerks and Black Flag vocalist Keith Morris. Keith faced mounting medical bills following a type 2 diabetes diagnosis and a series of surgeries. In response, various rock artists would mobilize in support of their friend. The first show in the early evening featuring various bands was at the Whiskey A Go-Go, where another project of Maynard's performed called Recreational Racism. It would turn out to be an early version of Pussifer, which is another story for a different day. He would then go across the street to the Viper Room, where a Perfect Circle performed a set in front of its first live audience ever. They performed 6 APC songs that night, and also a Cure cover of Love Song, mixed with Ozzy Osbourne's Diary of a Madman lyrics, ending the show with the song Judith.
You know, right before us, Gibby from Butthole Surfers was like doing a weird DJ experimental set. And then we got up as Maynard from Tool's new thing. I think we had a band name. I think it was called Perfect Circle. And we had like 6 songs or 7 songs ready to play. The moment before that, I was definitely nervous. Like that was, even though we're, you know, playing in front of 200 people, you know, it's just like a lot of things happening all of a sudden. Like people come in, "Oh, cool, you're doing that thing with Maynard. I can't wait to hear it." I just met Johnny Depp, who owns the club. Like, "Hey man, like nice to meet you. I can't wait to hear you think." Oh shit. You know, there's a lot of pressure mounting. And I was pretty nervous. I remember which booth I was sitting in and what it felt like, and then got on stage, and it was great.
One thing that I came across while researching this topic is an audio recording that was uploaded to YouTube that claims to be the audio from a Perfect Circle's very first performance at the Viper Room. But something about it seemed a little off. Mostly that the drummer sounds like it's Tim Alexander. From the reviews posted on Tool's website about a Perfect Circle's first few shows in 1999, it can be confirmed that Josh Freese was the first drummer they used for their first 3 shows locally in Los Angeles. They wouldn't start using Tim Alexander live until they would go on a small club West Coast tour starting on September 2nd at the Key Club. When I listened to an entirely different recording on YouTube, which is the one from the Key Club, I noticed that the last segment of that video, which is the song Judith, was the exact same as the posting that claims to be from the Viper Room. So yeah, this YouTube upload is a lie. There is no posted recording of A Perfect Circle's first live performance ever, or at least I just couldn't find it. But what's interesting is that a Revolver article that came out earlier this year about this topic actually mentions this upload as being from the Viper Room show, since they mention a quote from it.
This is the last song and it's not a joke, so don't laugh. This is the last song and it's not a joke, so don't laugh.
It is shared in Maynard's book that the set that they played that night wasn't exactly easy listening, but that it was evident that the band was tight and that the members were tuned to each other's nuances and that the songs were dynamic. Maynard at times would have a lyric sheet in his hand, indicating that the songs were still in its early stages. If you were to go to the old Tool fan club website, toolshed.net, there are some fan reviews posted on there of people who went to some of A Perfect Circle's early shows in August and September of 1999. At A Perfect Circle's second show 5 days later at the Opium Den, a couple of reviewers recall Maynard saying to the crowd before playing, "If you think this is Tool type music and you want to bang your head and break shit, you're going to be disappointed. This is AM radio style music, like Billy likes." A Perfect Circle played the same set that they had played 5 days earlier at the Viper Room, but Maynard promised that they would play even more material later that same evening at the Troubadour. Apparently between those two shows, a handful of Hollywood rock musicians would go to a cookout held at the backyard of Nine Inch Nails bassist Danny Lohner. While most everyone else was enjoying their meals and drinks, Maynard was at the edge of the yard, carefully going over lyrics he had scribbled on a yellow notepad. A Perfect Circle would go up the California coast in September of 1999, this time with Tim Alexander on drums, playing small clubs, and at each show, their set list sounded more and more tighter and polished. Fan reviews from their show at the Key Club mentioned that it was obvious many were there to see Maynard, since when he walked across the stage before the set, many in the crowd were yelling his name. Though Maynard would put a finger to his lips, shake his head, and would take his spot on stage without making eye contact with the audience.
This next song you probably never heard before, and neither have I. So I have notes.
Though he never looked at the notepad, so it's possible that Maynard was starting to feel pretty confident in the material at this point, and maybe was also just joking around a little bit.
Just found footage of it too. We're going out on a club tour. No one knows us, and we've got 7 songs. You know, what are we going to do? We're going to headline a 200-seat bar. Let's do a cover and merge 2 songs together, and that'll give us 10 extra minutes, and then we'll have a set. You know, that's all it was. And you know, I wanted to put this up on the Maynard Noms anniversary, and I was looking for the footage, and it's late. And maybe I still will put, but I've got somebody from the record label had a camcorder, you know, big old thing. And it's right behind Maynard's head, and it's looking out at the crowd, kind of like this, like singing Brenya, let's say, and you just see people kind of like taking it in. It's the first time they've ever heard this music, ever. Like, and there's no recorded version of it. It's a very different experience than somebody coming and knowing your music and just singing every word and kind of locking into it. You feed off of, and then you give more, and you know, the more the crowd gives, the more you give. Yeah, it was a wild thing, those first shows.
One fan review from their September 5th show at San Francisco Slim's mentions how the band's sound was almost too good sonically, like a spotless house that you just want to trail dirt into. It had been announced in advance that Tool would be playing its first ever show in over a year at the first ever Coachella Art and Music Festival in Indio, California on October 10th of that same year. But almost at the last minute, it was announced that Maynard's new band, A Perfect Circle, would be opening the festival on the 9th. In 100-degree weather, A Perfect Circle would play in front of its first massive festival crowd before ever recording its first record. Though, not everything went so smoothly. As they were finishing their mashup rendition of Ozzy Osbourne and The Cure, in the extreme heat, Paz's bass amp blew up and covered a lot of the stage with smoke. They ended up cutting their set a little short, though it's a little weird to think now how A Perfect Circle was the first band ever to play on a Coachella Music Festival stage. By now, many were aware that Maynard's new project was going to be a big departure from the more aggressive sound of Tool. A Perfect Circle showed a more subdued, softer, and melody-oriented side of Maynard. It was also evident by the stage presence that Maynard was not trying to steal the spotlight, despite reportedly him wearing a t-shirt that said in glitter writing, "Fuck me, I'm famous." Eager to maintain artistic control, A Perfect Circle would decide to fund the production of their album themselves, and with Tool set to get back together in the near future, APC would get to work on their record fast. Maynard would share, "I work best when you give me a puzzle and a set of parameters." Billy had been kicking around this music for a long time, and I think it motivated him for me to go, okay, we have exactly 5 minutes to do this. Eventually, I was going to have to get back to Tool, and I wouldn't have time to work on anything else. So if we were going to do this, we needed to do it now, and because we just absolutely had no time, we were able to create something pure without overthinking it. So in late winter of 1999, as many were preparing for a possible Y2K digital shutdown, A Perfect Circle would record a full-length album onto Billy Howardell's Power Macintosh 9600, using his own Pro Tools expertise. Most of the album was recorded at the Alameda house that had been shared by Billy and Maynard, in a room off the garage that had been converted to a small recording studio, and a small garden shed that was attached behind that was turned into a vocal booth. Another notable thing about this period of time is that Maynard had already started to transition his home residence from Hollywood, California to Jerome, Arizona. And so it was mostly Billy that still lived at the Alameda house. Though a lot of the guitars and bass had already been recorded by Billy in previous years leading up to this. The garage, being in the back of the house, was surrounded by tall apartment buildings, essentially leaving them with little to no privacy, and possibly making their neighbors sick of all the noise. But there was also one day of recording drums at Sound City Studios, and a couple more days of recording drums at Scott Humphrey's house, a friend of Billy's.
That's how a lot of the Perfect Circle stuff was, especially the first record, which I'm really proud of. I will say, out of all the hundreds of records I played on, there's a lot of, and I feel like I can say the stuff that I think is good, because I think there's a lot of stuff I've done that is not very good. That first Perfect Circle record, there's some really interesting things on it, because like a lot of the drums we cut at our friend Scott's house, who had this home studio. And he'd let us come in for like a couple hours before he was working on the Rob Zombie album, and that session would start at 2 p.m. So me and Billy would go in at 11 a.m. I'd go cut drums on a song, and then Billy would go, "Listen, we have 15 minutes. Let me just play this thing. Just play along so I can have something else to write to at home, and then we'll re-record the track one day."
Yeah.
There's a couple things on there that I just kind of like played along, and yeah, there's a weird feel that happens in the middle of nowhere in the second verse, because I didn't know it was going to be a second verse. Right. And in the end, we kept the completely spontaneous, I've got not a care in the world, because I don't think anyone's ever going to hear this. So I'm not purposely playing like an asshole. I'm trying to play something cool, but I'm not that worried about it, because I know I'm going to get to recut it, right? And there's a few of those things on that record we did recut. And I think there's an interesting kind of cool, spontaneous, free-spirited feel and vibe to it that I wouldn't have captured if I had learned the song, practiced the song. Then you can't do that weird fill there, because that would cover up the vocal. But I wasn't worried about that because I didn't even know there's going to be a vocal in that one spot.
During this same period of time, Billy was also still working as an assistant engineer in the recording of Guns N' Roses' album Chinese Democracy, where he at times would ask for advice from other engineers and help him with his own album.
Tracking the vocals for Judith was pretty funny. Danny Lohner, our good friend, called. I was in I had a very small studio, but it was basically like a converted pottery room off an old garage from the 1920s. So Danny called us during the tracking of Judith, and he was just, I don't know what, he had a sore throat and or drunk, and it was an entertaining exchange that is recorded, and I listened back to that somewhat recently, and he's basically trying to get us to kick Troy out of the band, and that he would shave his head, and we'd be four bald dudes in the band. Because Tim Alexander at that moment was like playing drums with us. That was a moment I can still remember us going, all right, motherfucker, you're going to be on the record. He goes, put me on the motherfucking record. And we did. So Ren Holder is Danny Lohner backwards.
What is so notable about this is even though today it is the expected norm to record a whole catalog of music on your own and at your own home, back in 1999, it was a rare exception. What is also quite remarkable about this album is due to their constraints of recording digitally at home, it was recorded at a sample rate of 44.1 kilohertz, when most industry released records are recorded at a higher resolution. Even their next record, 13 Step, was recorded at almost twice the resolution. Yet sonically it sounds really sharp and holds a lot of energy, even to this day.
This recording process was quite a bit different than what I'm used to. Normally, in all other instances, I've recorded to analog tape. So when you're trying to get a part right, you have the rewinding process, and you can get a really interesting flow going on with Pro Tools, where you loop the selection and you just kind of sing to it, and you really kind of have a little bit of, like I said before, a little bit of a safety net. And it was kind of interesting recording in his garage, which he had to keep stopping while the planes going to Burbank passed overhead, and it was the possum odor coming from the ceiling was interesting. So it wasn't quite the pristine studio that I've been in before. Not that we were always in the top-notch studios, but it certainly wasn't the same kind of atmosphere. And it's amazing to me that the record, I think, sounds as good as anything I've heard, considering it was recorded in a stinky garage. It's pretty interesting. Pretty fabulous.
Even in today's standards, for a band to come together like this, with a set goal in mind, and have everything done almost entirely by themselves, funded almost entirely by themselves, is truly a remarkable feat. Even though this technology is so widely accessible nowadays, for my entire music journey, it seemed almost damn near impossible to get a group of musicians together in the same room, have everyone be disciplined enough to get an album's worth of great songs together, get them tight enough, and record them all on our own. It is truly a testament to the work ethic and drive of all 5 band members of A Perfect Circle of that time. The recording phase of Murder Noms was done by the end of January 2000. A Perfect Circle would bring on board attorney Peter Paterno to hand out the demo to record companies that might show interest. One record executive who was given the Murder Noms demo was Vice Chair of Virgin Records, Nancy Berry. Also, as it turns out, A Perfect Circle had recruited Alan Mulder, producer and engineer, to mix the demo, whose wife, Toni Halliday, was friends with Berry. Taking Halliday's advice, Berry gave the demo a listen and was immediately enthralled by the track Judith. In her years with Virgin, Berry had worked with artists like David Bowie, Smashing Pumpkins, The Rolling Stones, George Michael, Janet Jackson, and Lenny Kravitz, so needless to say that her standards were high. Impressed with what she had heard, Berry would listen to the CD more than once. Though the final mixing and mastering was yet to be done, Berry recognized that Murder Noms was already a clean, professional production, but other top record labels had also begun to show interest in the band. Maynard and Billy were being wined and dined, and given all the too good to be true promises that Maynard by now was accustomed to hearing.
Early on, we had a guy talking to us, and he said, in this industry, you're going to meet the manager who's going to introduce you to the lawyer, who's going to introduce you to the agent, who's going to introduce you to the merchandiser, who's going to introduce you to blah, 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 just round in a circle of all these people you're going to meet, and they all know each other, and you're new here. And they're going to compliment the fuck out of you. So every time they say anything that's a compliment, you have to replace it with dumb and naive. Oh my God, I saw you guys play last night. You were so dumb and naive. I've never heard anything so dumb and naive. Just everything that comes, you just have to say, just replace it with dumb and naive in your head, and then picture them with bunny ears.
Holy shit.
And that just levels it. What are you actually saying to me? What are you actually saying? Because all I hear is dumb and naive, and I see the bunny ears, and I'm inside I'm laughing. It kind of levels what's being said.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we write the songs, we play the songs. What are we talking about right now? What do you want? And this percentage is standard. This is standard. Round on a circle standard, and pretty soon you're like, wait a minute. I got to do. I'm worse off than I was when I was working at Tower Records.
However, Maynard and Billy focused on the practical commitments that the labels had to offer. It seems that Virgin's offer seemed really enticing off the bat to A Perfect Circle. Though, according to a Billboard article of March of 2000, Volcano Entertainment, Tool's record label, had actually offered a matching deal to A Perfect Circle, but Virgin ultimately won out, with Maynard sharing. Virgin expressed interest to Volcano that this was a serious thing. I think Volcano thought that I was just going to be off gallivanting for a weekend. When we realized there was a label that genuinely understood what it was about, that helped us decide to go to Virgin. Apparently, the way in which Virgin sweetened the deal to outbid everyone was by offering a joint venture deal, which was rare for labels to be willing to do. The label and the band would essentially be business partners. The band would invest in promotions and marketing and split the profits 50-50 with the label. Only 2 months after signing a deal with EMI Virgin Music Group Worldwide, A Perfect Circle would go on tour opening for 9 Inch Nails in its Fragility version 2.0 tour that began in April of 2000. And just like anything else when it came to A Perfect Circle's early days and its Merge Noms project, the preparation for the tour was lightning quick. Nancy Berry would share, "I've never in my career done anything as fast and intense as we did for A Perfect Circle. Everything on the list that still needed to get done was complete the final mastering of Merge Noms, a music video, a marketing campaign, and the elaborate set designs the band would use in their concert tour." Barry was actually able to get filmmaker David Fincher, whose movies by this time included Seven and Fight Club, to direct the Judith music video. And as Billy shared in 2000, they simply liked the look of Fincher's films.
I think Fight Club more than anything to me. You know, it looks really unique. It has a feel to it. I think it did a really good job. It wasn't like some deep video, he just was basically shooting us a rehearsal. And it was going to be a deeper video, and we really didn't have much time. And then finally he just said, I just like watching you guys rehearsal. He was trying to get a vibe for what we were about and come down and watch us once in a while. And he just said, let me shoot you here. Put everything the same as you have down at this crappy rehearsal hall onto a sound stage, the same empty Chinese food boxes and your apples and magazines and whatever sitting around. And that's what it is.
If you watch it from the middle and then rewind it and then fast forward it, there's a secret message.
Yeah. In fact, there's even stuff in it. It's really cool the way he did it. So if you watch it going like this the whole time, there's a secret message in it.
One notable thing about the song Judith is that it was not originally planned on being the band's first single. It was actually 3 Libras. That changed when Rob Halford of Judas Priest heard the album before its release and highly recommended that Judith should be the first single if they wanted to sell 1 million records. Everything would be prepared in time for A Perfect Circle to embark on an extensive tour beginning in April of 2000 and ending in March of 2001, with some breaks in between, playing concerts and festivals in Australia, Europe, and North America. Around this time is when the music industry went from primarily being dependent on physical record sales to now being offered for streaming and download on online retailers and music sharing sites like Napster, iTunes, and later Spotify, where artists may or may not be compensated for their work. It started to become apparent in the music world that touring is where the money was, and for A Perfect Circle, since they had gotten a joint venture with Virgin and bankrolled the cross-country road trip, the band would reap 100% of the touring profits. At most shows, Maynard would mention to the audience that the main mastermind behind the music that they were playing was Billy Howardell.
You know, we were on the road a lot last year. We crammed tons of touring into about a 7-month period, like a year's worth of touring into 7 months.
You guys having fun?
Yep.
Yes.
A lot of fun?
No.
Maynard during this phase wore a long-haired wig that often covered much of his face, further contrasting his A Perfect Circle persona from Tools, but also due to a higher desire to obstruct his identity in public at that time.
You have had like a history of like, in terms of like performance and dressing up with wigs and breasts and things like that. Why are you compelled to explore that area? Is this cross-dressing or is this, what is this?
This is a way to have the person on stage not be the person that's off stage so that I can lead my life privately. Thank you for asking.
And looking back on it, not only is it certified platinum, but I found out that when it debuted, the Billboard 200, it was number 4, and it apparently broke a record. It is the highest ever debut to chart by a debut rock band. Did you know that?
Yeah, we knew that. That was kind of given to us to give us a little fuel, keep going at the time. That's a pretty huge honor. It was great. I'll be petty and say that maybe it would be higher if it wasn't for the the titans of pop that had just come out that same week. It was like, what was it, like Britney Spears or NSYNC or something like that that was just dominating everything, and we had a weird week to release. But yeah, it was a great reception, and kind of everything kind of fell into place.
Audiences across the globe that attended this tour were apparently reacting positively to the band. The band members played very tight with one another, often communicating non-verbally with a single glance, but with a loose stage presence that exuded confidence. Though across fan sites and chat forums, many were expressing concern that Maynard was no longer interested in playing or writing with Tool. But as history would show, that was not the case, and Noms was a refreshing gift to the world of rock music at a time when the airwaves were starting to be dominated by one of the biggest waves of pop music ever. It is also notably impressive that Noms was successful when nu metal was carrying the torch for heavy music at that time. Though I have always wanted Tool to put out music more frequently, I think having A Perfect Circle being birthed during one of these long gaps was a great trade-off. So I originally intended to have a song-by-song breakdown of this album, but seeing as this video is turning out to be way too long, and since I also want to start doing more frequent uploads, I'm going to make that into a separate video. I was also going to talk more about some of the behind the scenes stuff that happened with the Judith music video, but I'm going to leave that to a separate video as well. So if some of this seems a little disjointed or just weird, especially the outro, it's because I had to do some editing in order to wrap this up a little bit more properly as I could. Just wanted to let you guys know. Alright, moving on. Though a lot more simple in its thematic presentation when compared to Tool, at least in my opinion, Noms still had some interesting things to uncover that are not so immediately obvious. 7 of the 12 song titles are the names of individuals, and much of this album lyrically is Maynard spilling his raw emotions about people in his life. Almost as if Maynard had written personal, intimate letters to the people in his life and turned them into songs. The fact that most of the songs on the album are the names of people is a continued theme with the album's title, Noms, which is actually French for Sea of Names. Billy had help deciding on the title of the record with a friend named Stephen Rogers, who is a French literary major, and mentioned that it was a nice sounding phrase that you wouldn't normally hear being said in French. Possibly an ode to an old poetic style of speaking. Though Stephen would point out that the best part about choosing Noms is that an ordinary English speaker might often butcher it and say merdenon, which actually means shit no. I've probably been butchering the pronunciation of it the entire time.
Merde non. Merde non.
This sort of hidden comedic twist on the title definitely fit the personalities of both Billy and Maynard, who was definitely on board with the name. The packaging of the album also had a lot of creativity put into it, with some hidden secrets. The album liner notes contain symbols, including on the cover. This is apparently something that Billy created, and thinking of something unique for the album packaging. There is a way that one can figure out what each symbol is supposed to represent, and then eventually what each grouping of symbols is saying. Originally, I had planned on giving a detailed explanation on how you can decode what the ordering of symbols is saying, but this video is turning out to be way too long. There is a way that you can figure it out by yourself. Hint, this page and this page will give you the biggest giveaway clues. And also, A Perfect Circle did eventually post a key to their website that matched the symbols to the corresponding English alphabet. Though I still invite you guys to figure it out by yourself, if you've never done that before, and if you're into that kind of thing. You can also then figure out what the symbols that are placed vertically on the cover of the album actually say, which is La Cascade de Pronoms, which translated from French to English means the waterfall of first names. Most tracks are around 3 to 4 minutes, with Orestes being at 4:47, quite the stark contrast to your stereotypical Tool song. For a long time, I remember hearing from others that A Perfect Circle is where Maynard would express his more feminine side. Maynard's usage of the long wig during this era further pushed the notion of wanting to portray some sort of female presence on stage. However, I have actually found it hard to see in Noms where there really is a female perspective. If one were to really listen to the lyrics and even just the music sonically, it still seems like there's more of a masculine energy in all of the songs. It's only in the song The Hollow in which it really seems like Maynard is trying really hard to take the perspective of a woman. There is actually an interview in which Billy and Maynard talk about this feminine perspective in the music, but later in that same interview, they then show evidence of the contrary.
More of an exploration of relationships, the whole cycle of relationships and relationships gone bad. That whole cycle of stages of forgiveness and healing, pretty much.
Your work in the past has always been incredibly intensely personal, and you find this is even more personal.
The stuff in the past has been more, more left brain, esoteric, masculine in a more analytical, mechanical way. Not really a buff, big time wrestler kind of way. More like.
So, like in the stuff with Tool, you were more sort of like piecing it together in a kind of like, okay, this this makes sense. This makes sense here. Okay, here. So this process is a lot different, hey?
Much more intuitive, much more emotional, much more right brain, feminine.
How was it easy for you to get to that place since you had sort of previously been working in it?
The music takes you there. You just got to listen. Well, oddly enough, that clip is that song's probably the most masculine clip on the album. So it's not really a good example of what we were just talking about.
Yeah.
That would be probably the most aggressive portion of that whole forgiveness and healing process. That would be like the bitter blame end of the process. Then of course getting into the more cynical area, and then the forgiveness, and then the healing. And that would be the beginning, so to speak.
What is the difference for the casual listener? What is the difference between, I think I know the difference between Tool and Perfect Circle. I feel like Tool was more heavy, more like blue, like darker blue and black, whereas Perfect Circle seemed like a little more purple and yellow. Does that make sense?
Do you smoke a lot of marijuana?
I do.
All right. The difference between those bands is the wig. Different wig. On many occasions, different shoes, but definitely different wigs.
Different shoes.
I feel it's arguable that simply being raw with your emotions and spilling them out with no rationality is exclusively a female trait, especially when it comes to songwriting. Though Maynard has stated that the work he had done with Tool up to that point was more masculine than what he had done with The Perfect Circle, I believe you can find a few examples in Tool's early recordings where Maynard is really raw with emotion and not using rationality to solve a puzzle. Really, I feel that the notion of trying to exude a female presence through Maynard in this project had more to do with him wanting to have a different character on stage with The Perfect Circle than what he had with Tool, and he found inspiration in the fact that Billy originally intended to have a woman singer. Another important thing to keep in mind is that A Perfect Circle was not the first time that Maynard would present himself as a woman on stage. The songwriting for the most part is still masculine, both sonically and lyrically. Softer and slightly more melodic, sure, but as Maynard himself has pointed out at other times, he really takes one song idea at a time and tries to stay true to his first instincts when responding to the music. A Perfect Circle, I don't believe, is that much more feminine in its concept and presentation when compared to Tool. Only slightly more. The album was haunting, powerful, yet pretty at the same time. Noms seems to have an epic, memorable melody, song after song. The fact that this was an album resulting from years of collected ideas from Billy that were then quickly tightened up and polished is sonically evident, as every track seems to be compact with constant sound, but not rushed. There was definitely a lot of experimenting, and it was undeniably a rock record, though the songs were crafted in a way that made them easily digestible for a mainstream commercial audience.
This moment in time, man.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
It really was. I have to say, there was nothing mundane about that time. It was a whirlwind. It was one thing after the next. Interview upon interview, finishing the record, making the music video, getting ready for tour, going out, opening for Nine Inch Nails, having the David Fincher video hit MTV and everybody talking about it. Nancy Berry, who ran Virgin Records, who signed us, was so incredibly passionate and creative about getting the word out. It was just like all things firing at once. And needless to say, Maynard's history with Tool, just having a notable name and history and all the work he did with that to bring it forward. It was just everything was firing at the right time. And, I'm proud of the record. So it was like people were responding to it. It was awesome. And
yeah, it's a moment in time. Looking back on it, it's like everyone's like, oh, this is a return to rock and roll still exists.
So yeah, I simply wanted to do a video dedicated to this album, as I feel I have met many people who say that this is one of those records that was very impactful in their lives and helped them get through some tough times. Again, I will re-emphasize the impressive nature at which Noms was created, particularly how quickly everything came together. Nudged in between what are Tool's two most successful records, the formation of A Perfect Circle and the release of Noms was a testament that there was no lack of talent and vision when it came to Maynard James Keenan. This fortunately also introduced to the world of rock music another gifted mind in Billy Howerdel, who I think is a good example of why one should not limit their skills to just one area, because you never know when the right person will recognize your talent in something and help take you to new heights. Like I said early in this video, you can pretty much see this band as a supergroup. with Troy eventually going on to make an integral part of Queens of the Stone Age, Paz joining Swan, and then eventually the Pixies, and Josh Freese, well, he stayed with the Perfect Circle for a while longer, but then went on to be one of the most requested session drummers of all time, and played with many successful major bands including Weezer, Foo Fighters, and currently 9 Inch Nails, just to name a few.
What I was saying is, out of all the, having to re-listen to some of this Perfect Circle stuff before this tour that we just started, it's been fun for me because those first 2 records, maybe the first 3, but especially the first 2 records, I'm really proud of. I think a lot of it is a really great representation of my drumming. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And more so than a ton of other stuff that I could mention, and big name bands I've worked with, and I'm like, whatever, that's okay.
Well,
that's
don't
okay.
you, because you were part of the band.
And that's the other thing that makes it special. I've always been the 2nd, 3rd, or 8th drummer in whatever band I'm playing in.
Right.
Though the original lineup of A Perfect Circle didn't last too long, and their next album, 13th Step, was also brilliant, I think there was a certain kind of magic that happened there that has never exactly been replicated. And so after watching this video, I hope you guys will have a renewed passion for this album and a more increased appreciation for the music. So thank you guys so much if you made it this far into the video. I would like to do a video like this on 13th Step, or maybe retract a little bit and do one on Anima, but I'm not exactly sure what my next video is going to be on, since really I want to do a video that's going to be shorter than what I know this video is going to end up being at. I'm still in the early stages of this channel, so I'm experimenting a lot with what kind of videos I want to do. I'm realizing how long it takes me to do certain kinds of things, so my next video might be something shorter, but it's still going to be related to music. But again, thank you guys so much if you made it this far, and I'll catch you guys next time. So the last